Greetings, this is Anzalera from Elnor Gardens, and today I want to share with you my experience and my advice of how to grow rose cuttings quickly, effectively, where I would say 90% of them will callus. Now, my experience has been over years and years, and I would say over those years, most of them ended up in frustration. So, I own a small farm, which is a rose and date plantation. With my environment, I found that obviously because of my past, I am a little bit obsessed with dates, eating dates, and so I have about 12 species on my property of different dates from around the world, primarily the Middle East. And also I have roses, many different families. I also have the Iranian rose growing here, which is the famous attar rose, Rosa damascena, or Trigantopetala, which is known as the damask rose. And I wanted to share with you how I have propagated my roses. I will say I have tried every, almost every way or method of trying to propagate roses from cuttings. I'm not a fan of the grafting or the grafted rose. I prefer to grow a rose from its original stock, so not using a mother stock like a Dr. Huey or some type of mother stock rose in order to produce a different cultivar. To try and grow roses from cuttings, obviously I know if you are a huge company, I know that budding or grafted roses are much more efficient and economically, most likely, more suitable. But I will say that with grafted roses, there's always issues when a cultivar is put onto a mother stock. So, some quick examples, that the bud union, especially throughout the winter period, especially here when we have hard frosts, hard dry frosts, the bud union is weak and gets weakened, and this area seems to be affected more quicker than any other area of the plant. Also, you have the issue of the mother stock growing up underneath the main cultivar that you're trying to grow. So I've never been a fan of the grafted rose, and I much prefer to give the cultivar its own chance at producing a good, strong, healthy root system. And obviously that has then made me spend a lot of time trying to germinate roses from cuttings. I have tried so many different methods. I've tried, when I first started getting into it years ago, I tried just sticking cuttings in sand, of all things. No rooting hormone, no nothing. But I have found that with all these methods that I've tried, I have then since used rooting hormone. I have done the method of simply taking a semi-hardwood cutting or even hardwood cuttings, dipping them in rooting hormone, and then putting them in soil, trying to keep them moist, and keeping them moist to a fault where I actually make the cuttings go moldy. So I've had that issue. I also tried another method that I read on a rosarian website, wherein you bundle up a whole bunch of cuttings and then you put them in moist newspaper, and you basically bundle them up, wrap them in newspaper, put them in a sealed bag, and leave them somewhere like on the top of a refrigerator or something for about 2 or 3 months. I tried that method. I will say that I did have some success with that method over about a 2.5 month period, which you can see in the pictures. I will say that, maybe half of those cuttings, maybe even over half, went moldy. I also made the mistake of trying to give the cuttings more heat in this condition. Turns out I ended up steaming them. And as you can imagine, I spent so many hours cutting and preparing those cuttings only to steam them and basically kill them. Killing them with too much love. That would be my biggest downfall, is I have killed most of my experiments with too much observation, too much love. And so if there's any advice I could give, it would be to, do what it is you need to do and then just let your roses go without checking them too much, without worrying or fussing over them. So I did that method, and I will say, as you can see in the pictures, I had some success even with the tiniest cuttings, and I did this on purpose to see just how resilient Mother Nature is, and to see how resilient a rose cutting could be, no matter how small the cutting. And I had some beautiful callousing on even a 2 mil size rose cutting. So that just shows you it doesn't matter what size the rose cutting is, you can still generate the beginnings of a root system on a rose. Then I will say I hit the jackpot. I hit the jackpot because I found a method that was just superb, and I use it to this day, and that is the sawdust method. So the sawdust method is basically getting your rose cuttings at whatever size and shape, bundling them up and putting them in sawdust. Doesn't matter if it's fresh sawdust, doesn't matter if it's old, so long as it's untreated. You don't want to be using treated sawdust. Where do you get sawdust from? Well, I'm not sure where you live, but I had to find this out in my local area, and I actually went online to see who was selling sawdust, and turns out my nearest was 2.5 hours drive away from me, being that I'm in the country. And I thought, oh goodness, this isn't viable for me. And then lo and behold, I took a drive one day to the local supermarket and found a sawmill on the side of the road, and I didn't even realize, because it wasn't like listed in a big way online, so I didn't recognize it. So I went into this sawmill and asked them if they sell sawdust. Not only do they have sawdust, but they give it away for free. So I had mountains and mountains of sawdust that I could take for free. And so I got I couldn't believe my luck. So I got a whole big trailer load of sawdust, moistened all the sawdust, and then took all my cuttings, hundreds and hundreds, and basically put them all in the hormone, bundled them up, and then put them in the sawdust and just packed the sawdust on top of them. I don't know what it is about the sawdust, but I would speculate that the sawdust allows the cuttings to have some oxygen without losing moisture. So in that environment, in moist sawdust, they retain their moisture. They don't dry out. They don't start to shrivel or dehydrate. Some may, depending on the cultivar, but I have found with this experiment, with all different sizes, that they maintain their size. They don't lose water mass. Also, it is quick. It is so quick. Within a month, you can see here these pictures that I've had with callousing success. Some, in fact, have developed roots on them. Some species, some cultivars are slower than others, and there are some that take better than others. It just depends on what variety you have. But I will say that generally speaking, a good amount of callousing will take about a month. That's enough for you to have then that cutting in the ground. So that sawdust method was the absolute golden nugget. It was just, it's unbelievable. So I have several sawdust piles now around my property with hundreds and hundreds of rose cuttings. So just leaving them out in the weather. If you notice your sawdust getting a bit dry, just get your watering can and pour water over it. My rule of thumb is that after I put the rooting hormone on there, I will wait maybe a day or two before I go watering, because I don't want to wash off. I mean, it's highly unlikely, but I don't want to wash off the rooting hormone from the cutting, the base of the cutting. Um, there's something about the sawdust method that somehow disperses the water so it doesn't flood anything, so that there's airflow through there, so there's warmth. When you have the sun shining, it creates a warmth. It is just the best method that I have used, and it's the quickest than anything. So, I've tried putting the cuttings in an incubated environment, soil potting mix, covering the pot with a plastic bag, and just waiting for that to callus. The sawdust method is just unbelievable. So if you can get your hands on some sawdust, moisten the sawdust, and then go ahead and use your rooting hormone for the cuttings, and then bundle them up, label them, and then put them in the sawdust and just leave them there for about a month. Even if you left them for a month and a half, you're going to get some amazing calluses, even some root systems, and it's the best method that I have found. Other people and gardeners may have found other effective methods, but believe me, I have tried methods, and the sawdust method is hands down the best method. So, there's no drying out, there's no molding. That has been my biggest problem, is not so much drying, but molding, giving them too much moisture. And I found that sawdust works itself out and just creates the best balancing medium. So anyway, I hope you have found this video helpful, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the description. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you like, and I will be posting more videos to do with my rose and date farm. Thank you.